One of the games that blew my mind as a teenager as I watched the end of the sixth generation of game consoles was Elder Scrolls IV: Oblivion. Having only heard of Elder Scrolls through the third game, Morrowind, via Cartoon Network era / pre-Adult Swim era of Toonami, it wasn't until I had access to the gaming channel G4 and copies of Game Informer via my middle school library and a friend of the same school era who introduced me to the game on PlayStation 3. I even remember being pretty disappointed by Zelda Twilight Princess by comparison. Yeah, I know, they are different sorts of games, and I've been meaning to give that one another chance, but that was me between junior high and high school. But anyway, as for Oblivion, I could not play that game more extensively until several years later on the Xbox 360 when I lived in the United Kingdom and my dad brought home the 5th Anniversary Edition, which is essentially the Game of the Year edition reprinted and around the time Skyrim already released. And years after that, I would also buy the PC version off Steam off a sale. And how does the game hold after 2006? Let's find out. The story of the game follows a prisoner who is approached by the Emperor of Tamriel, Uriel Septim VII. After an attempted escort to help him escape, the Emperor gets assassinated by the mythic Dawn cult, which he predicted anyway. But before his death, you learn he had a secret offspring named Martin. Unfortunately, Martin's hometown is sacked by evil Daedric armies and cult of Mehrunes Dagon, which, after you fend off, you escort him to safety, leaving you, the player, to be tasked with fighting the Daedric armies of Dagon and the mythic Dawn, all the while help Martin take his place on the throne. And that is for the main story, and despite being an open-ended RPG with some degree of moral choice, this is a pretty okay enough plot, writing quirks and all, as Bethesda's in-house games are notorious for, but oh well. Besides the main story, you have up to 5 guild quest lines, 2 that fit more of the good guys, being the Mages Guild and the Fighters Guild, 2 for the bad guys, being the Thieves Guild and the Dark Brotherhood Guild of Assassins, with 1 neutral guild, even though you're awarded fame points, being the Arena. All of which are worth playing for the sake of upping your experience before even considering your main storyline. Not that it's required in this game in particular, but it does make it more interesting with what enemies you face the stronger you get. You can also join all the guilds as the same character, but this is something I tend to avoid, as I have 2 playthroughs. My good character is a Dark Elf Battle Mage, and my evil character is a High Elf. And there is also DLC plots to talk. Knights of the Nine, which focuses on another Daedric threat attacking churches, involving a quest to find sacred armor and restoring an old knight order. And Shivering Isles, set in the Daedric realm of, well, the Shivering Isles, and headed by the psychotic mad god Sheogorath, which, alongside hundreds upon hundreds of side quests, is one of the more replayable games I have ever played. The gameplay, as said before, is an open-world action RPG, with the lands of Cyrodiil and Shivering Isles being vast to explore with various dungeons and quests. Though on the action side, the combat isn't that great, but serviceable to play through, due to its customization. Like, you can have someone who's great with the sword and magic, like a Jedi or Sith. It's one of those games that utilize weapon and armor rot before Elder Scrolls did it away with in Skyrim, having to repair it with a hammer. But don't expect to repair all your gear until your smithing skills are good enough. You can even customize spells with a hefty fee. Yeah, I don't bother with that. In regards to visuals, I'm of 2 minds. The environments are, for the most part, frickin' gorgeous as you explore Cyrodiil and the Isles on their outside. Some dungeons like the Elven Ruins also look amazing, but some caves and other dungeons could look better, especially when you're in the realm of Dagon's Oblivion. Yeah, these otherwise hellish environments don't hold up that well, but the worst in visuals are the character models, mainly the faces. Besides, one set of enemies where the creepy factor works, there is a reason for all the memes about the faces in the game. Good lord. Anyway, as for the sound, the game's voice cast has some pretty big name talent, 3 of them playing very specific characters, such as Patrick Stewart as Uriel Septim.
They cannot understand why I trust you. They've not seen what I've seen.
Sean Bean as Martin Septim.
Yes, I'm a priest. Do you need a priest? I don't think I'll be much help to you.
Terrence Stamp as Mankar Cameron.
How little you understand. You cannot stop Lord Dagon. The principalities have sparkled as gems in the black reaches of Oblivion since the first morning.
And Linda Carter as all the female Nord and Orc NPCs.
I'm the chairperson for the Society of Concerned Merchants. We formed this group a while back to keep a nice, fair economic balance in town. Yeah? You're who? And why do I care exactly? Yeah, I don't need you, so go away, huh? I'm asking real nice because my mom brought me up right.
And while a large chunk of the voice acting isn't well received overall, to the point of being also mean to hell and back, there is some talent in there, especially from Wes Johnson, who not only voices every other Imperial not Uriel or Martin, he also voices the assassin Lucien LeChance, the Prophet, and the Mad God Sheogorath with distinct voices too.
It appears you've spoken to Lavanna. I know she sounds a bit like a raving madwoman, but she isn't far from the truth. Ulrich is definitely up to something. Every day, we take in exorbitant fines from the people. Where most of the money goes, I have a good idea.
A bad day? A bad day? Try a miserable existence! There's no point in talking about it. Action must be taken.
I am here to end your miserable life. But I can see the confusion in your eyes. You have no idea what I'm talking about, do you?
He was cast down by Pelinal Whitestring, but Umaru's spirit survived, and now he has returned to seek vengeance upon the gods.
A new arrival! A shame about my gatekeeper.
I'm so happy I could just tear out your intestines and strangle you with them.
The best of the soundtrack comes from its beautifully composed music. Unfortunately, the less said about the composer as a human being, the better. But make no mistake, there are other moments about the game itself that could be a little better, if not outright bad. For one, the combat. Not the best feeling, be it sword, bow, or spell, especially when it looks stiff. At the very least, unlike its predecessor, I know when I'm hitting something in an action RPG. Speaking of RPG, the mechanics are far from the best either, simply as it feels annoying that you don't get any experience from minor skills, not even a small, slow amount either. Not to mention, some spells in particular, it feels like you have to grind to get anywhere with the self-cast spells. One thing I should like more is being a vampire. As they are my favorite kind of horror monsters, I should like this. But no. My first time, I wasn't even intending to become one with my good character, and I had to go through a painful quest to get cured. When I wanted to try and be one for my evil character, nope, still wasn't fun. The perks were just not worth the pain of trying to keep fed and trying to fend off a burning sun. They made it more fun in the next Elder Scrolls game after that. Granted, it took a DLC, but still. Finally, and probably the biggest offender, are the DLC practices. There is a reason this game is blamed for a lot of the worst financial trends in gaming when it comes to microtransactions and the like. While the more bigger expansions like Knights of the Nine and Shivering Isles are fine, smaller DLCs for the game, including those that lead to new player homes like a castle, a mage's tower, a pirate's cove, and an assassin's cave, but easily the most offensive, and you've heard enough about it, is the horse armor. And stuff like this makes you wonder why even make further paywalls of. Like, almost as bad as those LEGO game character packs that are just the characters and no voice acting, let alone levels. Yes, I know I have all of these, but I never bought them separately. I bought the most up-to-date version of the game on Steam. Didn't want to leave a game incomplete. And I won't deny the DLC with the housing content have some cool features. Overall, even despite of the bad aspects I mentioned, I still have a major love for the Elder Scrolls Oblivion. So many quests to partake in and so many ways to play through them, in that it remains one of my favorite RPGs ever. If you can get over the quirks, you're in for a long and addicting experience even today. Longer if you have the 2 major expansions. But with how long it's been since the game's release, I recommend picking up the Game of the Year Deluxe Edition, so you'll have the worst of the smaller content without much guilt and with a much more complete game. And for hardcore PC gamers, the mod support will probably keep you hooked.